Okay, before we get started on our setting squares and putting our quilt top all together, we want to take another look at the pattern. Just as a review, the large print non-directional block fabric that you're using, we had 2 1/4 yards, continuous yards of that, and then we cut it in 3 cuts and then some sub cuts. So you cut 2 12.5 width of fabric strips, and then you subcut that into 6. So you should have by now 6 12.5 inch blocks. And then the other cut is 3 18 3/4 inch squares, and you'll have to do two strips of those to get what you need. You'll have extra, and you won't end up using all of your subcuts. You're going to subcut each one of those squares twice diagonally to create 4 triangles. It comes out with 12, but you're only going to use 10, so you have 2 extra pieces there. And then for your third cut, you're going to need 2 9 3/4 inch squares. So you would just cut a strip of that and then subcut 2 out of there, and then those 2 squares you're going to cut once diagonally from one corner to the other, and that'll yield 4 corner pieces. So I hope that's clear. If not, let me know. And then here's a diagram. This is how this thing is going to go together. By now you already have possibly all of your cactus pots on point. If not, you want to go ahead and finish those first. That way that will give you a chance to position your cactus pots where you want them. Depending on what fabric you use, what combination of fabrics you used, you may want to spread them out in a pleasing manner and look at those before you start putting these rows together. Now, unlike a regular quilt where you put rows together either this way or you might do columns, you're going to do these diagonal rows. Now, your fabric is on grain still, but you're just going to be turning your row instead of running it across. That's the only difference really in this design, and the fact that we're putting these setting triangles in. So you're going to have one row that has 2 cactus pots and an equal sized square of your other fabric. There's one here and one here. And then you'll have 2 rows that have 3 of your cactus pot blocks and then 2 of your other fabric. So there's one here and one here. So how we're going to construct these is this way first. You're going to construct these 2 with 2 seams here, and then your one with 4, you're going to do a seam here, 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 and here. So we're going to do all 4 of these first, and then we will attach our triangles to that, and then we can join our rows. I'm going to go over to the design board now and show you on my quilt how that looks. Okay, my design board is not long enough to put all 12 of my cactus pots on. So you're just going to have to imagine it by looking at the pattern with me here. Take your pattern diagram there of the entire quilt top and compare that to what I'm showing you here. So I have a stick in my hand. I feel like a schoolmarm. Anyway, here's that row that has the 2 cactus pots and then the other fabric. So all you're going to do is start here and sew these 2 blocks together, and then come back and sew this one together. And the same thing with these. You'll go back and do the same thing on the one with the 3 cactus pots. So you do your inner seams first, and then we'll come back and add our triangles on. Here's a tip for not cutting off those points of those half square triangles that you worked so hard on. As you're doing your 1/4 inch seam allowance, make sure that you don't go any farther than that connection right there, that little point. So that's the point of that cactus plant. So if you go down here, even if your 1/4 inch needs to go farther to get 1/4 inch, it's better to forego the accuracy of the 1/4 inch seam than to cut off your point. So just run your stitch line just like 1 thread width above that. So using that method, this is how my cactus points turned out. They're just perfect. Now I have my long diagonal rows sewn together without the corner side pieces or the corners, and I don't have this one sewn yet since it has corners all the way around. And then I went a little bit beyond my board here to kind of show you how my last horizontal rows of cactus pots will look. The bottom row is missing one to the far right. It's just a mirror image of this top one is what that will be. I just didn't want to tack it to the wall to show you that. But I have my long pieces together as I was showing earlier, and now it's time to put those corner pieces on. And essentially it's the same for all of them. So, you're going to stay with your long diagonal rows. Imagine it like this. And this seam right here will get attached. And the same thing on the other side. And all your ends of your diagonal rows will be that way. With the exception of this one. The only reason being there's no squares there other than the cactus pot block itself. So you'll put this one on and then this one on, and then once that's finished you'll add your corner. And the same thing on the opposite corner where you don't see a block down there. I do have one block left to go down there. So what I want to tell you about these, and this is why we waited until now to put these on instead of just adding them on each row as we were sewing them, is that you're going to want to line up your bottom here when you go to make your seam to sew this together, right sides together, and you're going to end up, if I push that over 1/4 inch, as you can see there, I'm just guessing, there's going to be extra over here, but we're going to have an opportunity to trim that, just like you would with any of your quilts that you square up. You're going to have an opportunity to make those even on the edges. Another caution with these is that you are working with the diagonal, the bias grain of your fabric. So when you go to sew these together, either it be this way or this way, you don't want to stretch these at all. So just pin them. If you like to pin your pieces together, this is a good opportunity to use pins to make sure you don't stretch this. Otherwise your whole quilt is going to come out wonky, and wherever there's wonkiness, there's bumps and lumps and stretched areas, so you don't want that. So this is coming together very nicely. I'm going to go ahead and put my corner pieces on, and my side triangles, and my top and bottom triangles, and then sew the whole thing together. Next shot you'll see will be the entire quilt top finished without border. Okay, one more tip I want to share with you. I'm sewing on my side triangles, and on some of the blocks I'm going to have some of these points that are, I don't want to cut off like I was talking about in the other tip. And so what you're going to want to do, since you have to sew from that bottom piece there, you don't want to sew towards your tip. Well, you do. You want to sew towards your tip, not against your tip. So in some cases that's going to mean that your your block that has the half square triangles is underneath. So how are you going to see to where you don't sew through that and cut your point off? Well, a really good way to do that is to take a pin from the top where you're sewing, where you're looking to, and putting your seam, and then drop that pin down in there. I'm trying to film and see what I'm doing at the same time. And then just hold it upright. And as you get closer, you're going to be able to pull that up and eyeball right through there with your seam. But that'll keep you from cutting off your half square triangle point. So as you can see, doing that, putting that pin in there to guide me, helped me to not run over my point. And I did have to move over just a slight little bit, which narrowed my 1/4 inch seam, but it doesn't matter. What's most important is those points. Now I'm putting on the very corner piece of that top left corner. It came from our 9 3/4 inch square that we cut. Actually, we had 2 of those, and we cut it diagonally, and then we ended up with 4 corners. So how are we going to know where to put this if it's longer on this side? You know, where do you position that? Well, you could go through here and kind of measure and do an average and figure out how much needs to be on each end. But I'm just going to use the middle of my block down here. Right through here is the very center of my block. So I'm going to put my point right in the ditch of that seam right here. And then get this all lined up here on the side and then sew. So here I am towards the end of that very seam that I was just talking about, and my seam is going to come out to here. I'm going to be off just a teeny tiny bit, but there again, as I spoke before, we will have an opportunity to square up our quilt, and if there are any discrepancies along the edges, we can square it up then. But you need to sew from this little indented corner from the other end, which is going the mirror image of that, towards this one. So here's what that seam looks like from the top end all the way down to where I ended. And you can see where my stitches begin and end. Started up here, and yes, I have some extra fabric right here on this corner that we'll be able to trim off later. Follow your 1/4 inch all the way down to this one, and there again you see just a little bit. That's not going to make it completely square, but not to worry, we'll be able to trim it. Here I want you to see what I was talking about right just then, and then now it on the other side, on the finished side. So you can see that my seam allowance that I have to work with for my edges is about 3/8 of an inch. So there's more than that right here. This is extra. Here's my corner. So from here to here is about 3/8 of an inch. So I've got plenty to trim off to get back down to my 1/4 inch. But that's going to be later once we've got it completely constructed. I'm to the point now where I need to add my rows together. I'm going to sew my diagonal rows together, but after having put on my triangle setting pieces, I have this extra here. What do I do with that? Well, you can just take and snip it off evenly. You can take a ruler and take your rotary cutter to it, or you can just take your scissors to it and eyeball it. That's what I do. If you don't trust yourself, don't do that. There you go. Ready to add your next row on. Okay, after trimming that little piece off, now we're ready to connect these 2 rows, which is actually a corner piece and then my first row that has 2 cactus pots on it. So what you're going to want to do here is match up your seams. So you're going to want to pin, put right sides together, and pin where those seams are. Here again, I'm trying to do and film at the same time, but I don't want you to miss this step. So here we are. This seam goes with this one. You'll pin here, and then this seam goes with this one, and you'll pin here, and then you'll straighten this out and continue to pin till you get past your corner, and you should have a little bit left hanging over on both sides. Alright, so here's my upper left corner, that first row, and then my corner unit there with the 3 triangle setting pieces, including that corner piece there. Just want to show you a little up close how these turned out, and this is how you should expect yours to turn out. Where those intersections are right there, I have probably a good 1/2 inch for trimming. Up here I have about 3/8 of an inch. Up here I have, I'm going to call that 3/4 of an inch, maybe 5/8. Same thing there. And then of course you started your sewing on these edges, so those are even as they should be, so that they can be connected to each other. Okay, so you have plenty of room for trimming and squaring up. And that's how this entire quilt is going to go together. So just continue with that method on your other rows. And the same thing with the corner up here. You have the same sort of configuration down here on this side. And then you'll be going back also and putting your corner pieces on the upper right and the upper left. Just the actual corner little your complementary fabric corner up there. So this corner actually becomes a unit. This one and the one down here. But the ones on the opposite side, the upper right and lower left, which you can't see down here, it would be down there by that last cactus pot. It'd just be a little corner piece that you would have to add. If you have any doubts or questions about any of this, please contact me and I'll help you get through it. Okay, here it is all put together. I love this. This turned out really nice. Give you a little bit closer up look. Everything went together nicely. All of my pots are facing the right way, and even these pots are facing the right way. Uh-oh, that one's upside down. Oh, can you believe that? I did that upside down. Should I fix it or should I leave it? Leave a comment. I think all of the other ones should be correct. Well, it can happen. Should I take it out or should I leave it? I'm thinking about leaving it. It doesn't really bother me that much. Okay, so here we are. And it looks to be about, let's see, I'm looking at the, well, here's a 24, that's 48, about 50, and I think I said it was going to be about 70 inches long. That's what I estimated anyway. So you could just go ahead and quilt this like this and put maybe a black binding on it or something. Or you could do some borders. You could do a light border, maybe a thin light border, and then something else. I think I will be doing something more to this. In the original cutting instructions, we ended up with some extra squares. Here's what I actually have left. I have, let's see here. This is the amount of squares I have extra that I didn't end up using. And then some other cut pieces. I have some more yardage of this. I have a little more yardage of this. And then my blacks, I have a few pieces of those. And I have a ton of this because I think I had 5 yards. And I experimented with some cuts that didn't work out. I was trying to get my pots all to go up and down instead of on the angle there. And I didn't cut them right the first time, but that's because my fabric was directional, which all of you, I told you not to use directional for this. So that's on me. But anyway, I'm thinking we're going to use some of these extra pieces we have here and maybe even make some more. I still have quite a few of these 4-inch cream colored ones. So I'm thinking about making some more half square triangles and fabricating another border around all 4 sides with those. So stay tuned for would it be part 5? I think so. I think this is part 4. So yeah, there will be another part to this if you want to do some optional borders. Otherwise, you can just stop right here, finish your quilt out, and you're done.